Welcome to the Becks, a podcast that explores multimedia horror with hosts Becky and Sydney. Join us as we talk about movies, books, video games, music, and much, much more.
Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sydney Rebecca.
And I'm Rebecca Snow.
And we're the Becks.
I almost forgot who I was there for a second. I don't know what was going to come out of my mouth.
Are you serious right now?
Yeah, I was just like I looked at you and I thought, what's my line?
The pressure's getting to you.
Right? I think I'm just tired.
Becky's cracking. So this week, we're talking about Ted the Caver, which is a creepypasta. It is a story on the internet written for entertainment.
I love how you're talking that way.
I don't know why I
don't either.
William like Shatner.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Like, she's really intense about this.
So yes, creepypastas were a thing. I don't really know how to describe them. They still kind of are. But it was like early internet days when they were the most popular.
I was going to say, are they still a thing? Because as soon as you said that, I can remember Jake when he was young. Creepypastas were a big thing.
And if you think that you don't know what a creepypasta is, chances are you do. You just haven't maybe heard it referenced as a creepypasta before. The one that everyone knows is Slender Man.
Yeah.
And that actually is because of all of the media attention that those two mentally ill girls got when they stabbed their friend or something. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
that's super sad. But today we're not talking about Slender Man. We're talking about Ted the Caver.
Yep.
This is my favorite creepypasta of all time.
Really? Your favorite of all time?
Absolute favorite.
It made me mad.
We'll get into that. It's very creepy.
Oh, it is super
And
creepy.
I've read it many times over the years. And each time I read it, it still creeps me out. You can find it if you just Google Ted the Caver. You could Google just Ted the Caver or Ted the Caver creepypasta. Either way, it'll come up and you can read it. It's free and it's very spooky.
It is spooky.
So as the name suggests, it's about a man named Ted who likes to go into caves.
100%.
So the story is made up very similar to a diary. He actually talks about in the story how he is posting it all here on the internet on this personal blog to catalog the story. It's kind of written in a way that the audience is meant to believe that this has really happened. It's a fictional story, though.
It definitely gives you the feeling that it really happened. It has pictures, and he talks about how he's taking the passages right out of his journals and sharing them.
Yep, and he adds little blurbs occasionally with his perspective now. So all of these events happened between December of 2000 and it ends in April or May of 2001. So it's right around 5 months of spelunking that happens. And he frequently goes caving with his friend, who he refers to as B.
Yes, because he's chosen not to give any names or share any of his friends. He doesn't even in the pictures show their faces and things. He's keeping their identities secret.
Yeah, and he refers to the cave that they go to as the Mystery Cave. He says early on that he will not, under any circumstances, reveal the name or location of the cave, because it is the passageway that they find and end up kind of excavating and widening. It's part of a cave that's very popular. He refers to it as kind of an easy cave, for beginners or whatever. And it's frequented. Like a lot of the main passages it's just obvious that humans have been there, trash.
Yeah, there's trash and graffiti, and so it's pretty easy for kids to get in, teenagers probably, and for anyone. You don't have to be extremely talented as a rock climber or a cave explorer to get into this cave, so.
Which I do want to mention, I referred to it as spelunking. He never says spelunking anywhere in the story, which I just found kind of funny. I'm wondering if it's just like one of those things that only nerds say.
Well.
Oh, okay. Hear the abuse I have to put up with here?
Oh, yes. Let's talk about the abuse.
Yes, Becky, let's talk about it.
Okay.
No. Anyway. Okay.
You can't handle the abuse. Sorry. I was going to say you can't handle the truth, but then it came out you can't handle the abuse. I'm tired tonight.
Wow, you're really on a roll here. Okay.
I'm funny.
So, Becky, did you know anything about creepypastas or...
Well, I knew about creepypastas. Jake grew up on the internet, basically. So, yeah, he read creepypastas. And he had read that one we referenced earlier. I don't like saying that. That's like just a whole bad thing with some of the...
Slender
Slender Man, yes. It was a bad thing to watch as a parent, to see two children, do what they did. But anyway, yeah, so I knew about creepypastas.
So were you, when I told you about it, what was your initial feelings?
Well, I knew it would probably be pretty cool because you don't usually lead me down, well, that's not right.
Hang on a second. What do you mean?
I was going to say, you don't usually lead me down strange and unusual paths, but that would be a lie because some of the things you make me watch...
She's referencing Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, which we are doing a future episode on. It's a delight.
Anyway, so I was, looking forward to it. I hoped I had time to read it, which I did. It was not very hard to read. It's a pretty quick read, so that was nice. Not that I don't love reading. I love reading, but I found the older I get, the easier I fall asleep when I'm reading, which makes it really hard to finish a book.
You also have ADD of some sort, so...
Yeah.
Ted and Bee go to the cave. They call it the mystery cave. That's what he'll refer to it as. And they find in one of the lower passages a hole, and it's really just it's in the wall, and it's golf ball size.
Yeah, he takes his glove the first time they're in there and takes a picture of the glove sitting on top of the hole. So you really, at first when I looked at the picture, I was confused. I couldn't see the hole, so the glove covered the hole.
Yeah.
So it was that small, but they could see down in it.
Yep, and they felt air, which there's a saying with cavers, if it blows, it goes. So they knew that there was some kind of passageway on the other side of this hole, and they wanted to check it out.
Yeah, it was super exciting for them at the prospect of getting in there because it would be a virgin cave, as they referred to it, where no one had gone in before. So, but they knew it was going to be a super tight fit, even if they could widen the opening enough to get in, because the cave itself, the passage, they could see was very small.
Yeah.
It gave me anxiety just hearing him talk about how small it was.
Yeah.
Because I thought, how does a grown man go through something that tiny?
And B, Ted talks about how B had experienced an injury and they actually didn't think that he was going to have any of his mobility back, but he actually was able to relearn to walk and all this stuff, but he was not going to be fitting into this passageway.
No.
That was totally up to Ted. But B was totally fine with being along for the ride. Once they started working on it, they actually nicknamed it Floyd's Tomb because of the famous spelunker who had gotten stuck in a passageway and died.
Yeah, why would you do that? That's like foreshadowing
Very morbid.
bad things. Yes.
Very morbid.
They said it was in respect to him, but yeah, Floyd's Tomb. You're just asking for trouble, naming this tiny little passage you want to go through a tomb.
Yeah.
Oh. I'm all for exploring caves. I just don't think I'd want to be in a space that I had to...
And you want other people to explore it, not you.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want them to open it up, and then I get to walk through and be like, this is cool. Look at all this. Yeah.
So one of the first things that I really liked about this story was the accompanying pictures and drawings and all of that stuff. It really just lended a sense of realism to it.
Yeah, if you didn't know it was a creepypasta and you just came across this, you would believe 100% that as you're getting into it to start out with, that it's something for real.
Yeah, it just seems like a real journal. The person who wrote this is obviously very experienced with, or at least passingly experienced with caving stuff. Because,
yeah, lots of details.
Yeah, tons of details, and knew all the terms for all the technical stuff. But the story doesn't get bogged down by that. Like I said, because he'll be like, okay, this is written for me, so I might need to actually kind of elaborate on some of the things I say because nobody's gonna know it but me, right?
Yeah, and I like, too, how he would be writing things down from the journal in there, but he didn't include the mundane, like he said, the things of, well, we went to dinner, we ate this, we talked about this. He just kind of put that in a little blurb as, my journal went on to say,
yep,
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
so
there's not
all
a
those
lot.
other details, because he was very detailed. He made it a point of stating that. He was very detailed on everything he did. So
that also, I feel like, gave a sense of realism to it as well. He came across as a very reliable narrator.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is funny because it is literally a journal.
Yeah.
It's just this dude's diary, so very easily it could have been, just by the way that he, wrote himself or whatever, it could have just been like, oh, this guy, whatever, he's just making shit up to get clicks on the internet or whatever. So they quickly decide, hey, we're going to widen up this hole. So they go to a hardware store and they get a bunch of tools. And they actually bring Bee's dog, Whip, with them. It's a Jack Russell Terrier. Ted goes on to say that she'd been on several expeditions with them before. She was very smart. She always was in view of their lights or whatever because she couldn't see any better than they could.
Now, they took her after they'd already been there once and had been digging because they had made the hole big enough. They thought she would go in there.
Oh, that's right. Mm-hmm.
And she could see because she loved to explore for them.
Yeah.
And they thought they could see at least how far it went before it got too narrow for her.
Yeah, and they talk about how they had this little doggy harness rigged so that they could lower her like a little purse down to the bottom. Yep. Which I thought was adorable. I love it when humans find ways to include their pets into things.
Yeah.
It just cracks me up. So you may be thinking, oh God, Sydney and Becky are talking about this. Does something happen to the dog? Nothing happens to the dog. The dog is fine.
Which is a good thing. I hate stories where things happen to the dogs. It makes me angry.
Same. Yeah. we would have a big siren warning if there was animal death in something that we cover. So I'm sure eventually we'll come across it even if we don't want to.
We have.
What?
Dog deaths we covered in Bird Box.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. I was like, what movie is it? Yeah. Bird Box. Mm-hmm. We did. We covered that. It was bad.
Aww.
Sydney's face right now. As my grand dog barks in the background.
Oh. Anyway, back on track. They try to chip away at some stuff. They have like a hammer and chisel and stuff. That doesn't really work. So they get a wireless drill, which I was like, oh my God. It's a mall walk reference right now. Which, okay, technically, Ted the Caver came first.
Yes.
But I still thought it was funny.
Well, and he used a drill, and in Mallwalk, they used a jackhammer. So,
yeah.
Which they referenced that they would have liked to have had a jackhammer.
Yeah, they did, yeah. But I was just like, ooh.
Uh-huh. No?
Mallwalk changed my life. I can't pretend like it didn't. So they do. They make the hole big enough, and they try to get Whip to go into the cave at all. First of all, like they get to the normal part of the cave, and when they start to try to go deeper, Whip starts acting weird.
Yeah, she starts whimpering and shaking.
She's staying real close to Bee. She doesn't want to go any further. They have to kind of nudge her along. And then by the time they get to the area where they would have sent her into the hole that they dug out, she was totally...
She wouldn't even come close to it.
Yeah, she was terrified.
She just stood there on a blanket staring where the hole was. And they said shaking and whimpering at different times. So yeah, no... Dude, that's my first clue right there. I trust my dogs. And if they have a bad feeling, I'm out. I'm out. Why would you stay? Please tell me why would you stay? Loser. I'm going. Sorry.
You feel very strongly about this.
I do. No, dogs know. If they're scared to go in someplace, you're still going to go in there. There's something going on, man.
They were caught by the hubris of scientific advancement or whatever.
They were dumb.
Testosterone.
Okay.
Etc.
Anyway. The dog did not want to go in there.
So they're like, well, we're not going to make the dog do that because they're good pet owners.
Yeah.
They just, dug with the drill some more and chiseled and whatever. They dropped the dog off the next day and actually went back because they were caught up in the frenzy of it. They were so excited. And when they started working on it the next day, because they would take turns, because it was like physically
taxing.
Yeah. And so, one would take a break while the other was doing it. And it was very loud and dusty, so they had masks and goggles and stuff like that.
Earplugs, they had.
Earplugs, yeah.
Or whatever, headphones, things to cover the noise.
Yeah. And one day when Ted is taking a break, he notices that Bee is stopped and is listening. And that's when they both start hearing rumbling noises. And at first they write it off because they're close to a highway. So they think it's just the sound traveling from the big trucks. So they kind of write it off. As time goes on in the story, they try to find excuses, and eventually they start running out of excuses for these things that are happening.
And B stopped because he heard something. He said it sounded like rock scraping rock. Mm-hmm. But he couldn't hear it again. It was just silent.
Yeah, it didn't happen again. Keep digging at it. They start actually making some good progress, and Ted is able to stick his head in it, and then he's able to stick his shoulders in it, and all this stuff. He says even though they're making a lot of progress on it, he knows it's going to be a tight fit regardless.
Yeah.
Hence the name that they come up with as Floyd's Tomb. Are you claustrophobic, Becky?
It depends on the situation. It really does. There's certain places that I don't want to be that freak me out. I would never put myself in a spot like that. Not a spot where I can't move freely, where I can't get out if I need to quickly. I don't like elevators a lot. I mean, they don't bother me. If I was in with 1,000 people and we got locked in there, it would scare me. That would be the only time I would be claustrophobic. I used to hide in the closet. Bless you.
I'm sorry.
You're good. I used to hide in the closet, and it never scared me, when you're playing hide and seek and things like that. So I think it would be like the feeling of something hugging me, where I couldn't move my arms, I couldn't move my head, I couldn't see what was behind me or in front of me. No.
Yeah, Ted actually talks about how when he gets further into Floyd's tomb, how he can feel when he inhales the press of the earth above him, and how he knows that there's miles of mountain above him pressing down on him, and underneath him is miles of earth, and he's just hugged between them. Yeah. And he's kind of, he talks about how he used to be really claustrophobic, but how it kind of is comforting. And I was like,
Because he's really worked on phobia.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, good for you, man, but I don't want to feel like I'm buried alive.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. How would you feel about that situation? To me, that just doesn't feel...
See, but there's a lot to be said about the adrenaline and stuff. I think these guys were running on a high because they, were potentially discovering... It was a virgin passage, So they... their heart was pumping, their heart was pounding, their blood was pumping, they were excited. So
what were they going to find at the end? And I still don't think I'd put myself in a spot where I may not be able to get out once I get myself in.
Yeah, but I mean, haven't you ever done something that scared you, but it's ended up being really fun or rewarding?
Maybe I've done something that scared me and I hated it.
Listen to this cynical woman.
No, I'm sure, but just that whole thing, I couldn't. I would have panicked the first 2 feet in. It would have been done.
And she doesn't want to go spelunking with me.
No, don't give me the puppy dog eyes. It's not happening. I will go to a cave that's wide open and that many people travel through.
Wouldn't you guys love to have us record an episode and post it on our YouTube and TikTok of just a video of us in a cave being scared?
No, it's not happening.
It sounds fun.
No, it doesn't. It does not sound fun.
So they start to hear the rumbling on and off while they work on the passage. And then the scraping noises comes a few times too. And oddly enough, the airflow stops sometimes. Because again, they found this hole and they felt air coming out of it, like breeze.
Which was pretty constant. That and the rumbling noises were pretty constant.
Yeah.
So it was strange to them.
And B actually had asked a few of their other caver friends what they thought it could be. And some people were like, oh, it could be like a waterfall or something like that. But it didn't explain why it wasn't always there. Again, the rumbling went away. The airflow stopped. The rocks scraped together. It was all just this big mystery. So
again, the dog didn't like it. I'm not going in there.
They never brought Whip back again. She stayed safe at home.
She did. Good girl. Smart little puppy dog.
So they start to make some really, really good progress, and this is when Ted is actually able to go into Floyd's tomb. He's able to crawl in, and he talks about how he has to maneuver his body up and to the right, and then...
When he goes in the first time, he puts his arm above his head, his right arm above his head, and his left arm at his side.
So he can pull with one arm and push with the other.
Yeah.
And once he gets into the tunnel proper, he still has to kind of wiggle around. It's very tight, basically.
He uses his toes.
To scoot. And he realizes, there's a widening, a slight widening of it to where he has a couple of inches, he can actually free his arms. And he realizes that for the rest of the tunnel, if he wants to get through it, he has to have both of his arms, completely above his head, and he has to just pull with his hands and scoot with his toes. Now, this is when I would be like, you know what?
I'm good.
I'm good. Because I think that if I could army crawl, I'd be okay. When he first starts off, he can kind of army crawl, or, he has one hand free. He can move okay, but then he gets to this point where he literally talks about how he has to exhale. He has to force all of the
air out of his lungs and his diaphragm so he can move. No, man. No.
Oh. And that's actually common in caving. I've seen other things referenced.
Well, that's
where
how people die caving too, but
to get through narrower parts, it's not constant, but they have to, take off their backpacks. They have to send their helmet through ahead of them, and that's something that Ted actually has to do. He cannot keep his helmet on when he's going through this tunnel.
So he's in complete darkness, except for he did have a flashlight in his hand. Mm-hmm. But the way his head was turned, he really couldn't see anything.
Yeah, because he had to turn his head to one side or the other. He had to commit to it because it was that tight of a squeeze for so long.
Yep.
So they realize quickly that they're going to have to scrape some of the bottom out because it's still a little bit too narrow.
Yeah, he says as he's going through that he's getting cut.
Which I don't think they ever say. And I forgot. I was going to look it up. But it's interesting to me. I know it was a lot of work already. But it's interesting to me that they literally only carved out enough to make it passable. Not easily passable, but just passable. I wonder if there's a caver code when you're making new passages or whatever that you leave it as intact as possible.
Maybe. It might be for safety reasons too, because I don't know how much you can shift rocks and change the actual...
Before it gets structurally unsound. I also thought it was funny that they just decided to... I guess I just don't understand. I don't really know what the laws are about caves because they are carving the shit out of this thing. They're opening up a passage. They didn't get permission to do that from anybody. Is there a commission on caving or anything?
The Caving Commission.
You know what I mean?
No, yeah. You would think that there would be certain laws that they would have to have permits to. If they're digging for fossils and things like that, you have to have, in a cave, you have to have some kind of permit to mine or whatever. They're opening up a structure, so I would have thought there should be some kind of local ordinance.
Maybe it's one of those things where it's better to ask forgiveness than ask permission.
Maybe.
Either way, they were doing it. They were committed.
They were excited.
So they start to try to carve it out more. They make their own tools, are able to chisel and carve out more of the rock. But when they're doing that, they hear this awful scream.
Yeah.
And Ted describes it as half cougar yowl, half scream of terror.
Yeah, they said it was like half human man and half cougar dying or something.
Yeah,
like that.
they couldn't pin down what the sound was.
He was doing the work at the time, so he had his headphones on and
he heard it over the drill.
Yeah, over the drill.
Which really, he took his headphones off immediately and looked at B, and B was staring at him, and they were both looking in the hole, and they got so freaked out that they started piling up rocks inside the little cavern that they were digging out.
To keep whatever the air quotes animal was in there in case it was coming back.
Yeah, in case it was dangerous.
But Ted actually says it couldn't have been an animal. There's no way.
Yeah, it didn't make sense.
No.
So they left for the night, but they came back and they weren't really that worried about it.
No, let's just get it done so I can crawl through there.
I'm sorry, but if I heard a scream from deep inside this dark tunnel under the earth
that I could barely get through, that I'm going to try to crawl into.
Because, okay, best case scenario, it is an animal. It's a wild animal. It's loud. It's probably very dangerous.
Sounds like something you've never heard in your life. So it's an unrecognizable animal, even if it is that. I'm not doing that. I wouldn't have done it when the dog didn't like it there, so whatever.
Yes,
I know, I will keep saying it.
We bow to your superior...
I'm a chicken shit.
Hey, you know what? That's what saves lives in horror movies. Let's be real.
I've made it to 51.
Your journal, if you were in Ted's place, you'd have been like, dog was fucking creeped out by pole in cave. We never went back.
Not going back. Story would have been over. That's it.
Like, I paid a domain on the internet to just report this, so...
It was creepy. It's all good. That would be my creepypasta.
And then she lived happily ever after. So yeah, they come back, and Ted actually even makes a note. He's like, I don't understand why we were not. It was like nothing could freak us out.
Yeah, he simply says that he knows that the dog should have creeped him out. It didn't. The scream should have stopped them. It didn't.
The weird noises and the airflow stopping.
It didn't.
There were lots of red flags,
yeah,
basically, and they were colorblind, apparently.
They were like, this means go faster. What tools can we use today?
So they get the tunnel dug out some, and Ted's able to go through to the other side. Again,
very slowly.
He actually tie a rope around his feet in case he does get stuck. So it's not like they're ignoring safety procedures or anything like that. When he gets to the other side, B pushes his helmet and his pack up, and he talks about how bad acoustics are in caves. So he doesn't want to go out from earshot from B, but that doesn't give him a lot of opportunities to explore. So at one point he does say, hey, I'm going to be back here in 30 minutes. And B's like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah. And he is trying to be cautious because he does remember the scraping sounds and the scream and the weird rumbling and air.
He's still not super scared
He's
yet.
not scared, but he is cautious.
Yeah.
He says, I don't want to go too far because what if he can't hear me?
Yeah. So he looks around, he takes some pictures, and he sees this curiously round stone. It opens up, and he's able to actually kind of stand up.
He refers to it as a room.
Yeah.
There's a room.
And way at, like, the back corner of it, he sees curiously round rock. Like, it isn't something that you would see naturally formed. And he kind of notes it as odd, takes a picture, and moves on. He finds some cave paintings or carvings as well, which he posts a drawing of. Because the further he got into the cave, his pictures stopped developing or whatever.
Yeah, he said all of his pictures before and after the room came out super clear. But the ones in the room, there was nothing. Yeah,
he said that the picture that he got of the round rock leaning against the wall to the far end of the room, that was the last clear picture that he got. Yeah. He had, like, one of those disposable cameras, so it's not like he could check as he was going to make sure that it was working. It wasn't until he got developed later that he realized that something was wrong. So that kind of bummed him out because B, again, was disabled and was not going to be able to go into the...
So he wanted to share everything with him.
Yeah.
So he actually drew what he saw.
Yeah, and that being one of the cave drawings, which was creepy.
Yeah, well, and he did say it reminded him of the Blair Witch Project.
Yes.
So...
It was stick figure people and all that.
Yeah.
So very, very unsettling. He finds some cool crystal structures and stuff, but he realizes it's getting close to the time when he needs to be going back to see B. So he leaves, and it's...
Wasn't he video recording when he was in there that time?
No.
Okay. Because he runs out first, and then they take the other guy.
Oh. Hang on, we gotta refresh our memories. We just read this yesterday, but...
There's so much that goes on.
Yeah, it really is a short little thing, but it packs a lot of story into it. Okay, so one thing he mentioned... Now, this is... Several months have passed at this point, and we're in April at this point, and... Before they went back to the mystery cave, they made something called a squeeze box, which I thought was super interesting. It's a wooden box, and there's an opening that can be adjusted in size. And then they use it to measure the widest and narrowest parts of their bodies. So that way they know, using the squeeze box, exactly what the diameter of the tunnel needs to be for them to move through it safely. So I thought that was super interesting. But again, I would have wanted it to be wider before I went through. It's still, even when they made it wider, it was so narrow. I don't know.
I know. Okay, so he took the camera and took pictures, and he was headed back, and he said he was little over halfway through when something bizarre happened. He was taking a break, and he heard a sound in the cave, which was the rock sliding. He heard that.
Oh,
yeah.
That's right.
He said that's when he froze, and he just kind of laid there because he didn't know what to do, and he couldn't hear it anymore, so he quickly began to scoot as fast as he could.
Yeah, so he was on his way out, and he started to hear that the rock was scraping behind him, and they were really freaked out by that. Interestingly, though, they went back.
Yeah, and they took a friend.
And
That's
they took
the friend.
And they didn't tell this poor man anything. They're just like, all they said was, hey, we opened up this new passage of this cave. Do you want to go through it with us? And he was like, hell yeah, I do. They didn't tell him about the scraping. They didn't tell him about the dog. They didn't tell him about the airflow. They didn't tell him about the scream. They didn't tell him shit.
No, he knew nothing. Poor Joe.
Which was fucked up.
Joe was just... And then they sent Joe in first.
They
told him how to
did.
do it and sent him in first.
And Ted makes mention, too, that Joe is a little bit lankier than...
Yeah, so he had
Ted
an easier time getting through, but it was still tight for him.
So he got through pretty quick. Now, Ted followed quickly after him, but when he got out, that's when he hit his head. So he goes to get out the other side of Floyd's tomb, and he hits his head. He cracks his head, and it's enough to where he actually feels sick. And Ted is super disappointed by this. He was excited to explore again, but Joe was upset too, because he was just like, this place is cool, let's do this. And Ted was like, nah, man, I can't. I gotta go back through. I don't feel good. And Ted saw the disappointment and was like, you know what, Joe? Go ahead and explore.
Yeah.
You know,
he was super jealous, though.
Yeah, he was really jealous, but he knew that it wouldn't be safe for him to continue on. He needed medical attention. I mean, just first aid kit. I don't think he went to the hospital or anything, but...
No. And he told Joe where to go, how to get where he needed to, and not to go too far, but he explained how to get there, and then he kind of relaxed and waited.
Yeah. He went back through, though.
Yep, went back through to be with B.
Yep. And they were just chilling for a while. I think they told him a specific time, like, hey, come back in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But it took him a long time to come back, to the point where Ted was almost ready to go back into the tunnel, despite his injury, to make sure nothing had happened.
Yeah.
To him. And that's when they start hearing noises, rustling and stuff like that, and they realize that Joe is coming back through.
Yeah, it was after they got worried, though, because it had been over the 20 minutes and they didn't know where he was, so they had hollered to him, and of course no sound because he couldn't hear. He was deeper in the cave then.
And again, the acoustics are infamously bad in caves.
And when they could hear the noises, Joe wouldn't reply to him. They could just hear something coming through the tunnel.
But eventually they saw...
Yeah.
They shined their light and saw that it was Joe. But Joe is not good.
No.
He looks sick. He's pale.
They asked him if he was okay.
He said no.
And he started up out of the cave immediately. He was done.
Yeah, he wasn't waiting for them at all. So Ted and B packed up the stuff really quickly and followed him out. And Joe just got in his truck and fucked off. And they're just like, okay.
Yep.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Now you would think that they would get with Joe, weasel out whatever happened, and never go back to the cave.
Yeah.
So what happened was Joe wouldn't talk to either of them. They tried stopping by his house, whole 9 yards, calling, whatever. They couldn't get a hold of Joe. He'd quit his job.
Yeah. He just never went to work. And they had asked him when they got outside the cave, did you see the hieroglyphs? No. Did you see the rock? No. Did you see any crystals? No. He just, nothing. There was nothing from him. No feedback. No. It was scary. I would feel that would be scary.
Yeah,
Here comes this guy and he's just completely traumatized and he looks awful and you don't know what happened. So, of course, what do they do then?
They go back. They go back to the cave.
Because things aren't weird enough. They've just traumatized their friend. He wants nothing to do with them or the cave. There's something going on.
Yeah. This time, though, they come super prepared, okay? Ted gets a video camera, and they get a caving telephone thing that he explains. It's like an old-fashioned phone on either end, and there's like a wire that they unravel.
Low voltage two-way phone.
Yeah.
So you have a wire on each end, and you can turn it on to talk.
Mm-hmm. Ted goes through, he takes the phone with him. Bee sends the rest of it with him. And he gets out and he starts exploring. And he said, too, that he was like, at this point, yes, stuff was freaky. We're unsettled, but they wanted some form of closure, right? They just wanted to see what was in the passage. And he starts recording as soon as he gets in there.
But he did say that it felt like the cave didn't want him there. Everything was going wrong. They were falling, they were dropping stuff, things were breaking.
Yeah, that's right.
They were having issues.
It was totally a different atmosphere, and he felt like he was being watched. That was the one thing that I forgot to mention, too. When he went in the first time and just took pictures, he felt like he was being watched then, too.
Oh, yeah.
But this time it was much worse. It really just felt like the cave did not want him there. He starts recording. He sees the round rock. He sees the hieroglyphs. He sees the weird crystals. He goes deeper in. At this point, he checks in with Bee a couple of times. And then he hears the scraping. He hears the rock against rock again. And it's coming from behind him. So he's deeper in, right?
Yeah, he'd gone through the room where the hieroglyphs were. Mm-hmm. And he was on the other side because there was another passage.
Yeah, and he was going to explore that a little bit. But he hears the scraping noise behind him and he freezes, panicking. He's freaking the fuck out because it's back to where the noise is coming from, back where he needs to get to leave, to get to Floyd's tomb. And he's like on his hands and knees, freaking out. He can't get enough air. He tries to reach Bee, and the phone isn't working.
Yeah, and he stood up. Before that, though, he stood up because he got nervous and he broke his light.
Yes. Oh my God, dude. Okay, so he talks about how it's every caver needs at least 2 backup light sources. So they have their main light source and then they need 2 backups. He said himself that his backups were not very good backups. He had a hand mag light, a mini mag, and glow sticks, okay? So this fucker, he stands up because he's panicking. He hits his headlamp.
Breaks it.
Totally gets total darkness. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then this is something, I've never been in a cave before. I don't know what this is like. There's a very unique darkness that happens in caves because there is no fucking light. You cannot see shit. Mm-hmm. You can't see your finger if it's just a tiny millimeter away from your eye. You can't see anything. So he turns on his mag light and he realizes he never put fresh batteries in it. So it's working, but it's very dim because it's going out. And he hears the scraping and he tries the phone and the phone isn't fucking working. Yeah. So now he's panicking even worse. The mag light goes out. He breaks one of the glow sticks and throws it in like the general direction. It just disappears into the darkness.
Yeah, behind the round rock, it disappears.
Yeah. So he breaks another one and goes towards where the entrance of Floyd's tomb is. And he starts booking it. And he even says, it was super dark. I shouldn't have been running. I was really making a lot of risk. I'm lucky I didn't get injured again. But I just wanted to get out of there, right? So he gets to Floyd's tomb, and he realizes, and he's winding up the wire that the phone was attached to, and it's severed.
Yeah.
Because the fucking rock
was rolled onto it.
Yeah.
No. By this time, what do? You have no light. You have to go through this tiny little hole. Something's going to get you. You can't move fast enough to get away from it.
I know, yeah. And he realizes that the other glow stick, he sees it. It's in a new tunnel that the rock had been covering.
Yeah.
So the rock moved, severed his connection to his friend. There's a new tunnel, and that's where the glow stick came from. And he said that there was this overwhelming smell of death and decay and rot. And he said it smelled evil, and he couldn't get out of there fast enough. So he yells through the tunnel, and he's like, B, we gotta fucking go. Something's in here. Something is in here with us.
Yeah. And he had injured himself. Because when he stood up, he hit the roof of the cave and hurt his back really bad. He was in a ton of pain. So it made it even worse to try and... to experience it, you have to read it. Because the panic that you're feeling... just from reading the words is just like, oh, no.
Yeah, it's like whenever you watch a movie and someone is running or they have to be really quiet and you're like, go, move, oh my God, go. Like, that is exactly how it feels to read this passage. And he makes it through Floyd's tomb. He's not being careful. He's scraping the shit out of himself. He tells B as soon as he gets out, like, we gotta go. They go out of this cave as fast as... Or actually, no, he tells B to go ahead. He's like...
Yes. Because he knows he's going to move slower. So he's actually telling him while he's coming through Floyd's tomb to get his stuff and start heading up.
Yeah, because B moves slower because he has issues, mobility issues. So Ted gets out. He starts running. He catches up with B pretty easily. They have to climb out of the cave, so they have to rappel down from a tree to get to the main cavern where most people stop. They have like a rope ladder that they have to go up. And Ted starts to notice that there was a rope that led all the way to the cave, to Floyd's tomb. And he starts to notice that there's tension on it. Like something is pulling it.
Yeah.
So that gets him moving faster. He climbs up the rope ladder. He gets to the actual thing that he has to attach his carabiner to and his harness to, so he rappel back up so that he can get onto the ground and be where they park their cars and stuff. But he gets to a point where it's just only one person can go up at a time. So he's watching the rope underneath him get tighter with tension, tighter and tighter.
Something's pulling that rope.
He's waiting for B to climb. Finally, B gets off. He climbs. They both get to the top of the cave and out onto the green grass and the fresh air, and they're so happy about it. And then the tension of the rope that's attached to the tree starts. And B wastes no time. He takes one of his knife and starts sawing the rope until it breaks. And he said that the weight or the tension on it was so great that it made an audible noise when it left the tree and dropped back into the cave. And they hightailed it the fuck out of there. So this is when the journal catches up with current time, okay? Ted talks about how they went home. They didn't really talk to each other about what happened. Ted started getting nightmares.
And hallucinations.
Yeah, like shadows and noises and stuff like that. Just enough. Like it happened. He said that it happened frequently enough that he couldn't just write it off.
He also quit his job. He took medical leave because he couldn't deal with it.
He slept with all the lights on, all this stuff. He actually ended up going over to B's house to sleep because he was having such a hard time. And B also had all of his lights on, but I think since he had never actually been in the actual room on the other end of Floyd's tomb, he was lesser affected. But whatever had followed them out obviously got to B too, a little bit, because again, he had all the lights on in his house.
But he ran into Joe.
Yeah, so he went to an overlooks because he wanted to see the city, he said. He just wanted to be comforted by all the lights, the city lights and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so
it's like he was drawn there.
Yeah, he saw the overlook and he realized that Joe was there. Okay, so Joe, of course, is the friend that they...
Traumatized.
They totally
completely
sent him ahead with no warning or anything. And Joe and Ted look at each other and they just have this understanding.
Yeah, and Joe says, "You been back?" Ted says, "No, we gotta go back." "I know. Tomorrow at noon?" "Okay." That's how they leave it. And then he drives over to B's and same thing. "We gotta go back. Can I sleep here?"
He doesn't tell B that he's going back.
Oh, I thought he did.
Mm-mm. Well, you can fact check me.
Well, I will, because you know me, because I gotta...
You love it when I'm wrong.
No, I just in my head remember something and I'm old.
No, I think it was just Ted and Joe. But this is when the entries in the website end. He says, I'm going back tomorrow. I need closure. I will update everyone as soon as I have answers.
He says, I ran into Joe and we're going back tomorrow at noon. B looked dead serious and just nodded his head.
Oh, see, if I was B, I wouldn't go back. Fuck that. I'd be like,
either. You don't have to be there.
Be like, you girls have fun.
Yeah.
But that's when it ends. Like, he never updates his journal.
No. That's it. And he literally says, this will be my last entry. I'll touch base in a few days.
Yep, when I'm back out.
Yeah.
Now, when I first read this, I was like, there has to be more. So I looked into it, and there was nothing. There's nothing. I mean, it was just a story made up for the internet or whatever.
Maybe.
I wanted a sequel.
How do you know?
Because I looked recently. I think the last time I read this, not this past time for the podcast, but the last time I read it. So some like movie company had stolen the idea of it, the basic premise, and totally ripped it off.
Oh, no.
So the original author was like, yeah, I just did it for fun. I'm trying to sue because it's my shit. I think he said he was going to try to sue. I hope he did.
Well, yeah, he should. That's his intellectual property. He did a great job with it.
Yeah.
Nobody else should get credit for that. That's just wrong.
Yeah, they were. Oh, he also mentions Ted did some research about cave creatures, and he came across something called the hodag.
Oh, yeah.
So I looked it up. I don't know if you did.
I did not.
It was totally like a hoax. I don't know if there's any actual... I didn't find anything that lended to the credibility of it actually being folklore or anything. It was literally this guy who was infamous for his pranks, and he said that this creature was...
Cave dwelling?
Yeah.
Huh.
And they had to like kill it with fire or something. He got a bunch of villagers to say that they saw it, and then they were like, we caught a live one, and it got so much attention because people were freaked out by it. He used like animatronics and stuff, which this is the late 1800s. It was kind of cutting edge. So
I guess
people bought it, okay? But it got so much attention that like scientists were gonna come and check it out, and he's like, it was fake. Please don't come here.
Oh, no.
But there's, I think it was like Wisconsin, and there's a museum that you can go to, and they have...
The Hodag Museum?
I don't think it's specifically the Hodag Museum, but they have these cool little statues, and you can buy touristy things. He is considered a cryptid, but...
Really?
Yeah. It was the first time I had heard of it, was reading Ted the Caver, though, so...
Fiercest, strangest, most frightening monster ever to set razor-sharp claws on the earth. Huh, interesting. So yeah, no, I'm not going into any unexplored caves with you.
Speaking of unexplored caves, by the way, one of the movies that always scared the crap out of me was The Descent. Did you ever watch that?
Yes.
We should do an episode on that too.
Yes.
More cave creatures.
I don't like anything that lives in a cave. It's scary. Scary things hide in the dark of a cave.
So, I mean, they don't need eyes. I think that freaks humans out. Is that
Yeah, I know it freaks you out. Would you like to see people without eyes, things without eyes, black-eyed children?
Well, that's something completely different.
Cave dwelling, no eyes. That's terrifying. I don't care what you say. Nope, not happening.
So yeah, Ted the Caver. It's part adventure, part horrifying story, part Blair Witch references, part cryptids.
There's a lot in it.
All mystery.
It's creepy.
All mystery. And it really is creepy. I don't know if it's... I kind of think I have an overreactive, imagination sometimes. So I don't know if I psych myself out and it's really not as scary as I think it is.
But isn't that the whole point of horror? Is that we take what we see, and because of how we react to it, that's what makes it scary.
Yeah.
For me, I can remember one of the scariest times I had was with my ex-sister-in-law. We convinced ourselves that someone was stalking us in this house. The house was tiny. We could see everything, but we were convinced someone was hiding in the loft. We had to call my mother because of our own minds convincing ourselves that that was happening. So definitely, that's the whole part of horror. And I think for a true horror fan, you have to be someone that will allow yourself to be hypersensitive to that, so you can feel that. Because people that don't react like that, how boring are horror films? Nah, not scared. Nah, doesn't get to me. You know?
Adam's wife Charlie is like that.
Really?
Yeah. She's pretty fearless.
Good for her.
It's kind of annoying. Like, I can't remember what we were watching. She was still around, and she was just like, they're being so stupid. Why didn't they do this? This isn't scary.
She's super rational.
Yeah. Be like, girl, go away. Let us be scared. Me and Adam like being scared.
Yeah. Hence, having a horror podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So next episode, I think we'll be talking about Garth Marenghi's Dark Place.
Is that what we're doing? We
I
have
think
to
so.
do the golden arm.
Oh, yes. Okay.
She never lets me do anything about me. Just kidding. She will edit that out.
So next episode, we're doing on the Golden Arm.
And the golden arm is something that I listened to as a child. It was on a LP. It was a record. I think it was a 33 record. And
Like 1933?
no, you know, they had the 33 size, the 45 size. They had different size records. Yeah, I know I'm old. It's okay.
I had no idea what she was talking about.
Oh, boy.
I genuinely didn't. I'm sorry.
No,
I
it's
didn't
all
know
good.
they had different sizes.
Oh, yeah. Their records came in different sizes.
So
Yeah.
it was a
a full record because it was a Halloween record. So it had spooky noises and it had this story on it. And I was young. I was only 8 or 9 maybe, and my brother was listening to it. So
How long is it?
I don't think it's super long.
So next episode we'll be doing on the Golden Arm. After that we'll do Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, and then we'll probably do The Descent. Hopefully, eventually sometime soon, Becky will get good at video games so we can do Little Nightmares.
The golden arm is 7 minutes long.
Okay, so we're probably gonna maybe find some different records to listen to just so we can...
I believe on YouTube,
We need to pad it out a
the
little
actual
bit.
record, I believe there's a whole LP of scary ghost stories. So we may be able to just listen to that. It's like a half an hour long or something.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let's plan for that.
But
the
this
Golden Arm...
traumatized me.
Becky...
But we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Mm-hmm.
Today the pod, tomorrow the world. My name is Sydney Rebecca.
And I'm Rebecca Snow.
And we're the Becks.